Hey, good morning, forensics classes. This is going to be our initial foray into, I'm going to try a video lecture here. This is going to introduce you to a hairy topic, and that is the topic of hair. I'm also going to have a little quiz here at the end of this on fibers, but you can see we've got here two hairy friends of ours. And so let's take a look. All right, so we're going to take a look at hair. I've added a little beats in the background to make it a little bit more upbeat. But these are some terms you should know, and you can do a little bit more research to kind of look these things up. But looking at the biology of hair, some key things to know are going to be here, right? So keratin is the protein from which hair is made. And so this is there's also a myth, by the way, that this keratin keeps being produced when you die, your hair grows longer. It doesn't. We're going to see in the next slide what a follicle is, but you develop your hair follicles when you are in the uterus, when you're in your mother's womb. The hair color is mostly the result of pigments, which are the compounds that will only allow certain light to be reflected. This also is something that's important here, this body area. We're going to see different areas of the body have different types of hair, and we may or may not be able to tell the difference using our light microscopes, but a forensic scientist with a well-funded lab and the latest in equipment should be able to do that. And we need, if we're going to do DNA, the root of the hair, which we'll see in a slide or two, needs to be present. This is just to see if you're paying attention. We've got two pictures. You go ahead and pause the video and see how many differences you can find. Okay, if you pause the video, hopefully you saw these were the differences. There are 9 of them. So if you were able to find these, then you are on your way to being a good forensic scientist with good observation skills. All right, so hair structure. This is animal hair, right? So animal hair has 3 parts that we're going to be focused on. That is the outside or the outer coating of the hair, which is called the cuticle. Inside of the cuticle is what is known as the cortex, and the cortex protects what is called the medulla. Now, the medulla is really important for us as forensic scientists because it turns out there's 2 things that are true about the medulla. What we're going to see is that in animal hair, the medulla, this part of the hair, is more than 1/2 the total diameter of the entire hair. And that makes a huge difference because when we're looking at animal versus human hair, we want to be able to tell the difference. We saw the case on Thursday's video, right, of the man who was convicted 26 years in jail, and they mistook one of his hairs for a dog hair, or a dog hair for one of his hairs. A human hair, the medulla is usually less than 1/2. Often it's 1/3. So the human hair, the medulla, this part down the middle, and we'll see in the next couple slides what this looks like, is much smaller than 1/2 the total diameter. All right, so what we're going to see here is the outside of the hair. Remember the cuticle, which is this part of the hair. For human hair, looks scaly, right? And we can talk about it as we're looking at it as a forensic scientist. We can determine things like how many are there in 1 centimeter of the hair, how much do they overlap, their overall shape, like these we would say are pretty flaky, and how much they protrude from the surface, right? We can also look at the cuticles for pigment. We can see if they contain pigment or not. So these is all information that the cuticle of the hair provides for us. All right, so we're taking a look here at the cuticle, right? So now the cortex. We just looked at this part of the hair, the cuticle. Now we're going to look at the cortex, and here's human hair. We can see the cortex is this reddish-colored area, right? And there's the medulla. We see how thin the medulla is right down the middle of a human hair, and so that's going to tell us that this is a human hair. Because remember, the medulla is the key in identifying human from animal hair. The cortex can vary in 3 ways, right? The thickness, the texture, the color. But this the distribution of the cortex is the most important component in determining which individual a human hair may have come from. So this is kind of like the fingerprint of human hair, right? Each human has a slightly different cortex. When we're looking at the hair, if we can see the cortex, that allows us to identify. We can also see the root and the tip based on examination, and we'll look at these a little bit later. All right, we're looking here at the medulla. Medulla can vary in three ways: the thickness, the continuity, or the opacity, which is how easily light is able to get through it. And notice some human hairs, like this one, don't even contain a medulla, or it's very hard to see. Other human hairs have a very thick medulla, but generally, medulla this thick comes from an animal. Notice this hair, right? The cuticle and the cortex are both white, right? And so we see white cortex here. Here the cortex of the hair is red, a reddish color, right? So we can identify these are hairs from two different individuals. This hair is likely from a different individual than this hair, right? These two are likely because this one does not contain medulla and this one does, even though the cortex are the same color, okay? So, and like the cuticle, the medulla can be important for distinguishing between hairs of different species, but it doesn't really help us determine differences between people. So keep that in mind. So we're going to take just a kind of quick review here. Now that we're in studying hairs, we have moved on from looking at fibers. But remember, we've got two types of fibers: natural fibers, which I have two really close-up looks at the difference, or what natural fibers can look like. Here we have cotton fibers, and here we have wool. And then on our next slide, right, we have what are known as synthetic fibers. These come from machines that are man-made. We've done the microscopic analysis, the burn analysis, and the chemical analysis of these. But nylon, rayon, polyester, these are some examples of man-made fibers. And you can see how they look under a microscope compared to natural fibers. All right, so it is time for us to take a little test. So let's see how you do. I'll put a little Google Sheet up, and you can try this. You may work with your neighbor on this, so you can have your computers open, but let's see how you do. No pressure, by the way. This is just practice. So see if you can identify a couple of things. In which samples would you say we're seeing the cuticle of the hair? In which samples we're reviewing the medulla? And which of these are animal hairs? Or sorry, which of these are animal hairs? Which of these are human hairs? So go ahead and pause the video and take a few minutes and see if you can identify which are animal hairs and which are human hairs. And also, the second part of the test here, we're not done with fibers, right? We don't know if a crime scene is going to contain fibers, so we're going to make sure that our skills are on point for identifying fibers. Got 6 different pictures here. Can you identify which of these are natural fibers, which are synthetic fibers? So take a minute. I'm going to put a little music on. All right, so here you go. Here is a chance for you to see the answers. Right, so we see here, we can see A, B, and C. Look at A, right? Look at the medulla there. And look at the medulla for C, right? It's this thick medulla in the middle of the hair. So there is no way that's a human hair. D, if you said D, right? A very thin medulla. That makes it a human hair. We look at I, right? We can see we're looking at the cuticle, the outside of the hair. We can see the flaking. And again, like F, right? We see we're looking at the medulla. It's a very thick medulla. We're looking at a rat hair, rabbit hair, and deer hair. So these are not human hairs. And then you can check yourself on the type of fibers. We've got B and F as our natural fibers. So see if you can tell why that is for those, right? Because remember, natural fibers tend to have a more random, asymmetrical pattern of growth. And we can see here, right, clearly this is a natural fiber. It's not made in a machine where it's very uniform, very similar, very machined looking. These are both natural occurring fibers.